Welcome to Inspire Me with Jay, a podcast focusing on meditation, the near death experience, and all things spiritual. Hello, this is Jay Spillers. My guest is Amy Pomar. Amy, how are you?
I am fine today. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. So, why don't you tell us about your near death experience?
Well, I actually had, it's interesting. There's times I can look back and for the longest time I wasn't sure what had happened to me, but so when when I had my experience, it was actually more of a shared near-death experience with my mom, and I was caring for her. I'll just go ahead and start. I'm an only child, and my mother and father are from Wisconsin. They moved down to Florida when I was young, and when I was a junior in high school, my mom had had a stroke, and that left her disabled and left her way of living, and she had to enter into this new broken body and trying to learn how to function and deal. She was 47 when she had her stroke. And I look back now, I'm 53, and I'm like, wow, 47, her life changed due to a medical thing. And I just can't even imagine. But she lived with the broken body until she was 72. And finally, at one point, she had had a series of small minor strokes, and that led us to her going back to hospice. And so while we were in hospice, or while she was in hospice, over a 3-day period, I had a series of different events happen that were unexplainable, immediate, and life-changing. So, my mother, this was the day after Christmas, and well, actually, she went back into hospice on the 21st of December, and on the 22nd of December, she had another series of mini strokes that did just, put her into the hospice bed. And Christmas, or the 23rd of December, was kind of the day that things started to happen. She was non-communicative. She was still responding to touch, and it appears that she was still hearing, but her body was clearly setting down. And so we went to I was there and was spending the night. I had a child, a 9-year-old, 8-year-old boy, and my husband, and we lived real close to hospice, so I could go back and forth. And so I went back that night, and I laid down with her in the bed. Her back was hurting, and I laid down with her, and she kept tracking this light, I guess, up on the ceiling, and I could see it. And it was really late, and hospice, of course, has dim colors and lights, and so this white light up at the corner was really noticeable. And I noticed that when she breathed in, the light would kind of push away, and when she breathed out, the light would kind of come in, and so that was weird too. And it was just something. And so not too long after that, the nurse came in, and I jumped out of bed. It kind of scared me, and she can't come and check with mom. And then I went home for the evening. Now, the next day I went back, and this is Christmas Eve. And the next day I go back, and she wakes up just a little bit, and she wakes up and she goes, "Oh, Amy, it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Oh, I'm home. I'm home. I'm home." And I was so excited for her. I was so excited for her because the next thing she said was mom and daddy, and then she started naming other relatives that were there. And I said, well, are you at home in Wisconsin? She said, oh, yes. And she says, they're all here. And she starts naming off her relatives and relatives that she never really talked about. So I really thought she's really there. And she then told a poem about eating pie, cheese on pie. I'm not really sure. I don't really remember the poem, but I think it was like cheese on pie, apple cherries, something, my, I don't even know. But so I knew that she was home with her family. And uh, now if I have to back up, and my grandfather died in 1976, and mom was the only child too, so she went home. We drove up to Wisconsin, and uh, you know, for to be with her mother and my grandmother, and they put me in bed with grandpa's side of the bed. They're going to put me to sleep with grandma. And so when I went to bed that night, there was a light that happened at the doorway, and grandpa came and he said, take care of your mom and your grandmother. And there was a big light behind him, and I said that I would, and that was the end of it. And I thought it was a dream, but I never forgot it. I also never told my mom. There was never really a good time to tell her I had grandpa come in a dream. She was just so heartbroken. Also in at their house in Wisconsin, it would have been 1972 or so, and it's very rural in the backyard. You know, no housing complexes in existence yet, and uh I I remember being out there on the tire swing. We had a new puppy, and all of a sudden there was this Native American guy walking in back of grandma's house, and I thought for sure that I was seeing things, but he had a bow and arrow, and he was wearing appropriate clothing and for like Indian hunting. And I know that there was a reservation not too far, but I got really scared. I thought he was going to shoot my dog. And so I grabbed my little dog. We hid behind the burn barrel until he left. And then I went into the house and told grandma, and she was pretty sure that I was just making everything up, but I wasn't. So I um when mom was lucid, and well, not lucid, but when she was talking in between, I wanted to see if I had fulfilled the wishes for grandpa. And I said, ask grandpa. And before I could even answer or finish the question, she said, yes, you did. Thank you very much, as his response. And so I thought, well, okay, we'll test out the next thing. And I asked her about the Native American guy that I saw, and she said, he's the one that walks between worlds, and you weren't supposed to see him. And so that just really floored me. And I thought, oh crap, and this stuff is really real. And that was the last conversation we had. So I couldn't deny that. You know, it was very interesting. So then Christmas Eve, actually mom died the day after Christmas, the 26th, early in the morning. But as things wound down, and I was in the room with her, and the nurse, of course, would come in and sit. It would make me, as her life was winding down, it was uncomfortable. Because every time they breathe, that, you know, you don't know if that's it. And my husband was across the way, and the nurse was on their side of the table, and mom had her breath, and she blew it out. And when she blew it out, and I was laying real close to her face, and so when she blew out her breath, I it it felt like I caught her breath. It felt like dry ice on my spine. It felt like I went into the black void, and I remember it plain as day. It wasn't scary. It just happened so quick, and when I was finally able to catch my breath, my husband had made his way over to this side of me on the chair, and the nurse was over here because I wasn't responsive to them. And I breathed out, and she took that one more breath, and then that was it. And but it was so life-changing. And so for many, well, we went through a grieving process, and of course, and shortly at, well, 6 months after mom died, my husband's father died, and then I got pregnant at age 40 with Grayson, my 12-year-old who tried to help me earlier. So and after a few years of acclimating to this new normal, I started having, I started drawing spontaneously. I started, it was when Ancient Aliens kind of first started coming out, and my husband would be watching it, and they, you know, they don't give you answers. They just kind of lead you around in circles until the next week. And you know, so they would be talking about something, and I'd say, oh, it's this, and you know, and I have no reason to know these things. I had no interest in them. And so I had no idea that that I could draw. And then all of a sudden I was trying to explain things, and I would sit there and draw out these explanations of whatever I was trying to get across. And it was so confusing to me. And I had no idea what happened, but I kept feeling that, you know, that feeling, that dry ice on your spine feeling, and it just, you know, it's just always there. So it kind of set me on a seeking path. And it was 2007 when mom died. It took me up until us being home, really, to understand that that I had had a shared near-death experience with her. I had no clue what had happened, but I knew something had. But I I have gone down some really crazy roads, and trying to find answers to things, and now I feel like I have some good answers for reasons why this happened and how it happens, and it's really exciting to have these conversations done with others now. So
do you think
so anyway, that is my start.
Oh, I was going to say, do you think you had a sort of a portal or connection that opened up from an early age that allowed you to start having spiritual experiences, starting with the Native American when you were probably like 3 or so?
Yes, I think actually I do. When I was 4, I was at the mall with my dad, and we were on a jungle gym, because back in 1972, you know, the play area in the mall was like big brass climby things, because you know, kids, right, they don't need to be safe. And anyway, I remember being up on this thing going, Dad, I'm a clown, and then I fell, and my teeth went through my lip. And so I remember rushing to the dentist. I remember, don't really remember anything else, but then I remember being on the ceiling, and I had nitrous oxide, you know, the gas. And so I had an out-of-body experience at that age that I still remember right now. And it didn't dawn on me until really just recently that maybe that could have been actually a near-death experience. But as soon as the dentist came in, I thought I was going to be in trouble. So I remember just going right back, and then I woke up in the chair. And then I also secretly turn up the nitrous oxide when I go to the dentist later, just to kind of recreate that, because it was amazing to be up there and saying, no, I would never suggest people do that. I don't do that. But anyway, it's I think that I don't know, and there's no way to check, but I think that may have been one. I do know that our that our soul is housed, within the electromagnetic field, and it's that electromagnetic field that's around us, that it's like a Faraday cage. So nothing can penetrate the soul until that Faraday cage is broken.
Is that sort of like the
I
silver
think
cord?
that's, yeah, yeah. Well, no, well, yes. I mean, we're all corded, and um, but the cords are such entanglements that it's really, that's so much to unravel, and that's why when you go through these self-actualizations and the 3 days of darkness, or whatever new age term you want to put in, when you come to the self-actualization, that allows you to sever all of the cords that have everything, it's, you might not like the color red, for example. I don't want to say you got red on. I've got pink on. You may not like the color gray, um, but you may like some shades of gray, but not the whole thing. And completely forgot where I was going with that analogy now. But um, but you have to kind of sever all of it at once. Another way is when you get tested for food allergies, right? And they go in and they eliminate, the things that you, can eat by can't eat. And so when you go through this actualization and you cut all the cords that have everything to do with your lack of self-worth, about being a good cook, and that's really when you're cutting, that the cords that bind. But the silver cord connects us all through everything, and it's not meant to be necessarily broken. A good representation of that, what we have here, if you watch the cardinals and everybody, when a pope is getting elected, or when they're, what they do is they take, they write the name of the pope down and on the piece of paper, and then they sew it through with a ends up being a big kite string, right, at the end. And that always reminds me of being courted through God. It kind of just through the center of it, and then everybody's connected. But
So did your event with the dentist happen before you saw the Native American?
Probably, okay, it had to have been, I don't know. I know I was 4 and I was in kinder, and because I had to smile crooked because my teeth had gotten black and blue. It probably was before I saw the Native American. I'm trying to remember what it felt like outside. If the burn barrel was out there, it probably was more fallish. So yeah, that would have happened before I saw the Native American. I never thought much about that stuff. I'm really good at reading people, usually, and reading something valid about them, usually in an effort to help them feel worth. My job in my career before I was a stay-at-home mother for the last 12 years, was corporate recruiter. And so I was a high volume corporate recruiter. So I would hire, hundreds, if not thousands of people over my career. And I always understood that it was a life change for them. Always understood the the feeling that they came with the interview to the dinner table with, if it was something that they needed. Or I used to get in trouble all the time because I would give people the benefit of the doubt and hire them. And but I'm like, but I I had uh I I had one time, I was hiring for one of the telephone companies, and like T-Mobile or something, and there is these girls, and they uh, were all dancers at a local men's dance club, and
Mhm.
they wanted to be out of that. They didn't want to do that anymore. So they came to interview, and on their resume, they had a resume. On their resume, they put the dance club and everything about it. And you know what? They were the best hires I've ever had in my entire life. These girls, really, it took a lot of guts to say, this is who I am, this is what I've been working, and I'm ready to do something else. And so I had the opportunity to give them a chance, and they ended up, I saw one of them not too long ago. And it was so nice to see. Their life is so, different, or hers is. And now she's a mom, and it's, nice. So I have always felt that stuff about people. The real magic, though, didn't start to happen until several years ago. And really being able to tap into new ways of new clairvoyance, or all of it, all of it. It all
Mm.
exists. It's all true. It's all of it.
What did it feel
So
like when you were out of your body, um, when you were at the dentist? Could you see 360 degrees all the way around?
no, I didn't. I can do that now, though. But no, but that's a great question, though. No, I thought I was in trouble. I It felt like, and I still remember the feeling, and it's kind of like right here in your solar plex area, I guess. It feels like, oh, when you go over a big hill, and like this, or you drop really quick, and your stomach kind of, you get butterflies in your stomach a little bit. It felt like that. Um, it just felt like, I don't know. I can feel it right now. It feels I just remember it was nice. It was really nice. But I wish that I knew then what I know now. I probably would have stayed a little bit longer, tried to do something a little more fun. But I never forgot it. And I think I'll always recognize it if I feel it. Next time I'll know for sure.
Mm.
So.
I think you mentioned that you went in the void during your shared near-death
Mhm,
experience.
mhm,
Was it just black? Did you feel any
mhm.
presence there or anything?
No, it was just black. It wasn't. It was really just for a split second. But which ended up being longer than a split second. It lasted from the time it took my husband to realize he needed to come over. So maybe 5 seconds, maybe 10 seconds. I don't even know. But it was just nothing. And I had caught my breath, and it just, there was no good, bad, and it was just it was nothing, and perfectly perfect being nothing. There was no upset, because it was, it also, something I never forgot was that black void. So as I've been seeking answers, some of these answers come from the most amazing people across the planet. And I happen to be in Idaho. We'll go back. And I was talking, I went to this bar with my mother-in-law's family. She went with me to Idaho, and so we were at this bar, and I sat down next to this woman who was friends with this other man that I came with, and she starts talking to me about the void. Well, not really the void, but just saying things to me that made sense at the time, but they were very esoteric and very cryptic and made me think. And so we've been friends for a while now. And she was the one that has been the most interesting answer for the void, which is that it is a space of creation, that it is nothing and all at the same time, because it's waiting for creation to happen. And so when you are in the void, you start with the color red, and the color red is what breathes life into this creation space. So I've been thinking about that a lot, actually, the past few months, and enough so that I ordered a whole bunch of black canvases and some red paint, and I'm gonna just kind of see where things go from there. If that's the space of creation and red is the first color to create out of creation, it should be kind of interesting to see what abstract thought comes out, in that. And I'm hoping it will be exciting. Maybe not. Maybe it'll just be a piece of red yarn on a black thing. Oh, it's so exciting. But
Was it a peaceful place to be in? Did you feel a lot of peace?
yes. It wasn't, yes. Yeah. Well, there was no anxiety or fear. It's just like I was just there. And then I was not anymore. Waking, I got out of the void because I breathed, or I had to take a breath. I had to let the breath out that I had caught. And I believe my mother's soul went through me. And if I look at how we measure energy, or when you have energy fields that are so close, and their toroidal fields are intermixing together, two people's energy fields mixing together, it's kind of like that, you take it and you pull it out like taffy, right? So I think I got pulled through this void because mom went through that way to get to where she was going. And it would also be facing the corner, that the light was on when she was there. So she went that direction anyway. So it went this way and out. My father also had an experience, and he didn't tell me about it for many years after that, but he also had that light on the ceiling. And he talked about that later. But he thought I was all full of woo-woo stuff, and he didn't really want to, he wanted to acknowledge that it was there, but he didn't want me to talk to him about it. Just wanted, but
yeah, I remember a friend had told me one time when his father passed away that he had two sisters there, and one was praying that the other sister would see something. And she said that she saw an angel take his soul out of his body. I remember him telling me that story. It's kind of like that.
Well, it's actually very much like that. So So as I started thinking about some of these events, this is always an unfoldment, right? And when you have time to really sit and think through things a little bit more, you start getting insight or added insight. And so I really wanted to know what that light was on the top of the corner up there. And so I really contemplated that a lot because I saw it and it was there and I knew it and I could feel it and it was different. And so I started having a daydream. And what I ended up coming up with was that these were banister angels, that there was these two angels and they bring the light of God down, and they're there, they watch God, or they're God's eyes, and it's like a big vacuum cleaner, because you want to go toward the light. So it's like this big vacuum cleaner kind of tunnel thing that they're waiting to catch the soul with. The angels that were on them in my, and this is why I was laying in Mom's room still too, look like golden banisters at the end of a stairwell. And I drew a picture of them. They don't look like angels on the start. When I can't draw what I see, it's hard to explain what I see. So when it filters through and then you draw it out, it doesn't always look like you want it to. But I had sent you a my IANS thing, and at the bottom of that were drawings, and the banister angels are in one of those drawings. I could send those back over to you too. But they were there waiting, waiting for Mom, and they weren't scary. They weren't anything really. I mean, you knew that they were angels, but they weren't really anything to. I mean, you wouldn't look at them and say, "Oh, that's an angel." Kind of look at them and go, "Oh, that's a banister." But they were more than that. And that was a weird daydream to have. I really thought that I was so exhausted. It took me a good amount of time to process all of that stuff. I'm glad I did.
So
Best thing ever.
When you talked about self-actualization and clairvoyance, do you practice any kind of meditation or connect to those kind of experiences?
Well, it's been very interesting. I have had so many different opportunities to learn so many different theories about how you connect. And of course, when you start going down these rabbit holes, and there are a lot of them, you got the Matrix people, you got the alien people, you got the people that are pagans, you got the people who are this, and so there's all these pieces of the puzzle, and it has been an unfoldment really of learning how other people do things, and then kind of connecting through that. When people explain things to me, I can see it happen most of the time. And so when there are, old stories or old ways of doing things, my meditation is more daydreaming. I'm on all the time. I see in like 3 different layers. So I can see you sitting here in your house. I can kind of feel the organic lineage from where you come from, and everything that houses that, which would be, your like, I'm half Polish, half Irish. So that lineage is your organic lineage, and then your soul, which is always connected to God, and your higher self, and so all of those views are available for people, and it really helps to put a balance in when you can start learning how to use the different pieces of who you really are in a more productive way. A lot of the messaging that's happening now is for us to go back inside and to really connect to who we are and what our worth is. We have spent 2 years or more saying all these things we are not. We have spent years saying, I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not a racist, I'm not a this, I'm not a that, right?
Mhm.
And it's just, we're just tired. So it's time to start saying who we are and who we would like to be. So, I am a 53-year-old woman who lives in Jacksonville, Florida, who wants my neighborhood and my friends and my family, both here and afar, to have the life that they deserve to have, and everywhere. So yeah. So
Yeah.
so I reach out a lot to other people, and I so love it. Oh, I love it so much. So,
Well, I think the true essence of every person is love and peace and those kind of qualities. Some of the junk at the top is not really our true essence. Where, things like fear and hatred and anger and all those things, that's not our true essence, I don't believe,
right.
of any human being.
No. And we've all been experiencing it too. And it's all been being defined for us very clearly in the past, few years, and it's still being defined for us. And it's because we need to define it for ourselves and say, I'm just not this, I am now this, and start living who you are. The amount of energy it takes to live in hate or fear or any of that stuff, the amount of energy it takes to impose that type of fear and everything in others is best run by corporations, I guess. I don't know. But I see it coming to an end, and it's getting more ridiculous too. I mean, completely ridiculous. And one of the best things that this process has helped me understand is universal laws and how they work and how they're applied. It's helped so much trying to figure out like the juxtaposition of this feeling or that feeling and how it plays in. But the law of correspondence is one of my favorite ones because it really shows us how off balance we are. So the more the ridiculousness that comes out from other people, the closer we are to ending it, because, at some point people are just going to go, you're just even too stupid for me to even, I just can't, they're going to walk away. And we're getting to that point now. And when that happens, it's because we're choosing ourselves. And we're choosing ourselves, we're choosing the environment we want to be in, and we're choosing to take back our self-worth. And, a lot of people have lost faith. But really it's lost faith in themselves. And that's what we should be doing and that's what I'm doing and want other people to do, is to just slough off all that stuff and make, just admit it doesn't matter anymore, and start taking care of your body with the foods that do matter for you, and taking care of your family in a way that you're spending time together. We've had so much opportunity to change the way we've lived for the past couple of years, and we're not done. Certainly there's a lot to go through, but it's going to be so worth it, I think.
Well, as part of it,
that's my hope.
As part of it, will you step back? Because it seems like there's thousands of different voices telling you what you are, or what you should do, or what you should think or believe. But if you step back for a minute and just kind of look within and hear the voice within, to start to hear the truth.
That's right. That's exactly what it is. And then when you dismiss all these other things that it's not, that takes the noise out of your head, and then you choose to remove that noise too. Sometimes you have to remind yourself that you have chosen to remove that noise. People get caught back up in the drama real quick. But it only happens a few more times until it burns you enough. You're like, you know what, screw it. It's kind of like quitting smoking for the last time, and then the last time, and the last time after that. But eventually you'll quit. And we're being drawn inward, to listen inward for a whole host of reasons. But I think right now the most important one is for our sanity. It's people are really having a hard time, and it's been very interesting to watch people coping, and we're not interesting, but it's just where I think everybody's ready for things to end, and so it's time to step up and do that for yourself. And when you do it for yourself, other people will pay attention, and they'll do it for themselves too, because if you can do it, I can do it.
So do you think there are external forces, whether they're reptilians or demons, that kind of try to pull humanity down and distract, and that they might even be controlling elites within society?
I do. I really do. I don't want to be, I don't want to be somebody that believes that, but I do. Every continent had their own indigenous, and or the original people. And to think that there were not other things here before our before creation or after, would kind of be ridiculous. When I see things like, I think of things like addiction as a consciousness. It's like a thing of energy, it's like a snake, that goes in, around, and through. I really don't know of one person on the planet who hasn't been affected in some way with addiction. Certainly here in the United States, and with everything that's happening here, and even in Canada and Mexico. I mean, just everything that's happening revolves around addiction. And it's its own consciousness. And if you go back to like the Native Americans, and when we came over, and we were distilling alcohol, and they were not supposed to be drinking alcohol because their organic body, they understood, belonged to the earth, and all these other things, and it was really bad. Addiction just ravaged through, and it's ravaged through our homes, everybody's. So I see that as its own consciousness, that's being fueled by anger, and greed, and hate. And I tell you, the hardest thing that I haven't been able to grasp is people who don't care. I can't wrap my head around people who don't care. Even if they care for the wrong thing, it's still caring. But there's just this whole host of these zombie people that just don't care. And it's my friend, my best friend committed suicide about 1.5 years ago. She got connected, got hooked up with drugs too. And I saw her go from, a healthy, my best friend, to someone who drove from Colorado to Florida, and it just took her soul. It ate her soul. It's just, and there's nothing, the fentanyl that's coming, it's all deliberately, plotted and planned, and it's, sold and made by corporations that we support by buying their band-aids and everything else. So this whole thing has to break. It all has to break, and it is breaking. Our education system is just screwed right now. Are having a 22-year-old and a 12-year-old, and that just from those two, it's like night and day. It's crazy. And having religion being used to generate fear has to stop. The medical pharmaceutical companies making us skinny pigs, the eugenics globalists, all of them, it all exists, and it all affects us in a lot of different ways. And we need to start paying attention to how much we were lied to. And then we need to have some complete compassion for ourselves for being someone who was lied to and let them lie to us. It's one thing to know somebody lied. It's another thing to accept that you accepted the lie for all your life, and it's not real. That's a bitter pill to swallow. It really is. And it's kind of what we have to do to clear the air. It's say, it's all got to break, and it will. But we'll be absolutely fine. And it's all this stuff is worth fighting for. We can't, yeah. So, we bring in the Christed energy through how we live, and how we live through ourselves. When we come to the understanding that we are, we don't always have to have faith, because God has faith in us. Even when we have zero faith, even when you don't have a relationship with God, you still have a relationship, because not having a relationship is the relationship, and all of it is okay, and coming back inside, making these choices of who we are versus who we're not, allows us to get to that better place, where we can live as a better person, where we like ourselves. We don't even have to love ourselves yet. We can just like ourselves. And you don't even have to like your whole self. Maybe you can just like one little thing about yourself. And we really deserve that. So
what are some of the things you do to connect with these principles you're talking about, like loving yourself, or just sort of getting away from the distractions? Is there something you do?
Yeah, well, first of all, I go find the friends that I want to have. So like if like we had this big crystal and gem show here yesterday, and I a lot of friends that are all into that, and I really appreciate that. But I was saying to myself, well, I'd like to go, but I need to go with someone who actually knows what they're doing. So then I have to go find the friend that does it, so I can kind of create the world that I want to live in unconditionally, by letting people be who they are. So I think that's really important, to people know that they can be themselves, good, bad, or ugly, and in front of you, and you can make a choice whether you want to be around it or not. But I do that. I also spend a lot of time being nice to people in places like the grocery store. I live in Jacksonville, Florida, and Jacksonville's kind of set up in a weird way that anything you need is usually within a 15 or 20-minute vicinity of you. But we are also the largest area, county, almost, I think the third largest county in the United States. So it's vast. So, it's an hour and a half from one end to the other. So I spend a lot of time in my neighborhood. I spend a lot of time talking to people or being nice to them, but in ways that, not nice, like, oh, open the door. That's manners. That's not, practicing kindness. But I'll have to give you an example. So So I was in the car pickup line, and it was a year and a half ago. And it was really cold and windy, and it's not like that here very often. So we don't have, people get caught off guard with clothes, what they're wearing. And I was watching this homeless guy walk. He was coming down the street, and he had two big bags, and he couldn't move. He walked like he was a gingerbread man. And so I was watching him, and he was carrying bags, and he was okay, but he had to get off the curb and step down and then get back up on the other curb. And so I was watching him, and he couldn't maneuver the curb, and he couldn't get back up on the curb. And so I'm looking at the car line, and I'm looking at everybody else, and I'm like, why is nobody stopping to help him? And here I am in the car line, and I'm getting just, irritated that nobody's helping this man. And so finally I hear this voice in my head, well, why don't you go help him? So I'm like, oh, okay. So I did, because that's what I should have done to begin with. And so I went and helped him, and it took a long while for him to get down to the bus station, and I stayed with him, and he smelled so bad, and I felt so bad for him. Oh, he smelled so bad. But it was carrying his bags for him, and I was helping him, and I did it because I felt bad for him, and then I did it because nobody else was doing it, and I wasn't doing it necessarily to I don't even know. But at the end of it, he said, thank you. And I said, well, you're welcome, and he said, no, thank you. He says, nobody's touched me for over a year. And and I said, well, I'm sorry. He's like, no, nobody's literally put their hand on me for over a year. And here I was feeling awful about, he smelled bad, and I'm going to be late, and it's rainy, and now I'm wet, and I smell bad, and I'm late, and the kid's going to be in, it's going to cost me all this money. But so worth it. And, I just, so now I don't overlook that. And I don't overlook other, for opportunities for other people to be kind, or to just even a gesture. And once I realized how much of my ego went into, that stuff, like, I'll be nice to them, or I'll see this. After I realized all of these things they didn't really matter. What mattered was someone treated him well for a minute, how breathtaking. I just can't pray for him harder. I hope they let him on the bus. I hope he got to where he was going. I hope somebody else stopped to talk to him again. But if not, here, at least once. So I don't know. There's opportunities like that all the time here, and in front of you all the time. Uh, when I go to the grocery store, sometimes, and I'll picture it before, and then the whole time I'm driving, I go, I only want to see people being kind to each other. I only want to see people being kind to each other, and I want to see people helping, and I want to see people being patient with one another. And I go in the grocery store, and there it is. That's all I see. So I think I like to do that. I think that makes it nice too.
It's kind of like raising the
Um,
vibration when you do that,
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
and it's
But
like, oh, go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
I was going to say, like, when you look at like life reviews, a lot of times it's things like where you help someone and then you never thought about it later, but then that's highlighted in your life review as this was an act
Mhm,
of love and kindness that you showed to this
mhm.
person. So that might be something that you experience within your life review when you pass.
Well, well, I hope so. I I I spend a lot of time in my meditative stop pause really is to be an observer. Uh, learning how to be an observer to everything has helped me observe my own self within things too. So, stop before you speak, just trying to become one with just being there. I'm walking into this grocery store or whatever, and this is my experience walking in, but I'm also part of someone else's experience, because I stopped and they almost run into me, so now I became part of their experience. And so now they almost ran into somebody, and now they're in a hurry, or maybe they got embarrassed, or maybe it didn't even bother them, or, there's all these possibilities. And so being an observer and watching the ripple effect of one action throughout a small little area like a grocery store is fascinating. And you can really start to apply laws of physics and the other really cool quantum things that we're not supposed to understand, but somehow miraculously do. And I also found that that's how your messages come in most too. So um, as you yourself are a message in however way to whoever for whatever reason, they are also for you. So when you start observing and not forming an opinion of necessarily about the way you should see things or the way versus the way you do see things, when you just allow them to be, a lot of the negativity kind of starts to roll off, and you really then are someone who is more balanced and aligned with their normal electric system. And so those people that can feel energy or who can see it, you'll have a more a balanced energy load. You'll be effective in a group of people, help to calm them down or help raise them up. When you smile at someone because you sincerely like them, or you're sincerely happy to see them, right? Then,
Mhm.
then, um, that's a completely different smile than the little smirk I get from my youngest girlfriend who thinks I'm stupid, you know, and I'm like, oh, little girl, someday you'll be like me. So, but yeah, it's 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 a choice to go out there. And also i I think people need to understand too that if you have a bad day and you're mad and you're angry and all of that stuff, that's fine too. Absolutely fine to be like that. And in fact, if you're going to be angry, then be the best angry you can be that day. um if you're going to be jealous, be the best jealous you can be. I mean, really experience it for all it's worth, right? And at the end of it, you can decide whether you choose to stay in that energy, which takes a lot of energy, or to kind of let it go. It's kind of like people stopping short of finding the solution. They need to work through it, and all of this stuff comes easier as you start working through the truth of who you are and being really honest about things. You know, it's easier for me to forgive someone who's lied to me because I've lied and then I was forgiven. So I can understand how it is to be them. So the bad things that you've done are just as important to being an observer, understanding, as well as the good things, just as important.
Mm-hmm. So if people want to reach out to you, how can they reach out to you?
Oh yeah, anybody. I'd love people reaching out to me. Let's see. I have a page on you can find me on Facebook. See, I'm old. So I'm so old. I should have an Instagram or something else, but I really just don't want to. But I'm on Facebook still. So Amy Zaborek Pomar. I'm sure that you'll have my name up there someplace. So I'm on Facebook. That's the best place to reach out for me. I have also a page that I did for my art a long time ago called Divine Abstract. That's also on Facebook, but it's been a little while since I've been on there. I've just kind of moved on. But I'm seeing a new revival of new art coming for people. So it's been Divine Abstract's been going a little bit more, but so there. Yes. So, and reach out anytime.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thanks for being on today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I love talking about this, and I think it's so important that people hear. You know, I will say one more thing. When Mom was explaining to me what she saw and who she saw, I realized very quickly that she was seeing her soul was up there in heaven, her higher self. And as she's describing the beauty and as she's describing the love of what she saw, she was actually being a filter for God. And so people who are needing so much healing right now for so many reasons turn to these near-death videos, because you've got people that are a filter for God, really, or whatever you want to call it, creator, whoever, coming through, and it's so important. So thank you so much for having me on, and thank you for doing this for everybody else. It's so important, and I wish you like so much success and everything. So
yeah, thank you.
you're welcome.